All right, guys, what's going on? Welcome in. So on Rich Cimini's newest episode of his podcast called The Flight Deck, of course, I'll leave it listed down below in the description box to check out. He name dropped, 9, 10 different head coaching candidates here. Now, some, of course, more serious options than others, but let's break down the entire list, right? Let's go through every single name he's mentioned. So the first one that came up, of course, and this is like kind of the headline grabber, Mike Vrabel. Right now, according to Rich Cimini and his sources, Mike Vrabel has told people that he would seriously consider the New York Jets as long as he likes the GM. Now, to me, this is obvious. You're looking at this new opening with the New York Jets, a team with talented players, and you assume that Vrabel then likes the new GM hire. Of course, it makes sense, right? Now, I think really the caveat here is this whole Belichick influence, right? How much is Belichick going to deter Vrabel from, interviewing or accepting the job? I think he is going to have some level of influence, but Mike Vrabel's an established guy. Mike Vrabel is not he's not in the McDaniels, Matt Patricia, side of the fence. He's a winner. He turned around the Tennessee Titans. He had multiple playoff wins. He had wins with multiple quarterbacks. A lot of credit for developing Marcus Mariota and, of course, Ryan Tannehill. The defenses were always stout. But with Vrabel, you just get a sense of, that leadership, that accountability, that standard, which the Jets just clearly do not have right now. And I want to say, before the season, before we knew Robert Saleh was going to be fired in week 5, if you ask Jets fans, right, who do you realistically want to see coaching this team moving forward if it's not going to be Robert Saleh, the answer, I want to say the majority of the time, was Mike Vrabel. Again, does this mean that he's going to be accepting the job, that this is going to be happening? No, it just means that he's considering the Jets as an option. And to be honest with you, I think Mike Vrabel literally could interview with every single opening. Bears, Saints, what's going to happen with the Cowboys, what's going to happen with the Giants, what's going to happen with the Raiders, right? I think there's a lot of interesting storylines right now with head coaches. What's going to happen with Jacksonville? To be honest with you, if I'm being just 100% objective, I think Jacksonville makes a ton of sense for Vrabel. Knows the AFC South really well, has had a track record of turning around defenses. You look at the personnel with the Jaguars, specifically on the defensive side of the football, a lot of them fit with what he wants to do. I think he could really turn that organization around quickly. I know he's not an offensive guy to develop Trevor Lawrence, but again, he has a track record of identifying offensive minds to surround put his offenses in good positions. You can talk about an Arthur Smith. You can talk about a Matt LaFleur earlier on. Again, Tannehill, Mariota, they were pretty good under that Vrabel era for the Tennessee Titans. So, look, if the Jets can bring in Vrabel for an interview, that would be awesome. Again, I'm fully expecting that to happen. It's the whole accepting of a job, which is, that's the big hurdle, obviously. And of course, I have no idea. I think because Vrabel's going to have his pick between any team out there, it's going to be tough to pull him in. But there's a chance. Let's move on. By the way, actually, quick little side note. What's going on with John Robinson, right? The former Tennessee Titans general manager. Obviously, him and Mike Vrabel were really close. I actually bumped into both of them down at the Senior Bowl. They actually sat in front of me during one of the practices. And I caught up with one of the members from the Titans staff waiting in line. I remember it was freezing. I was trying to get a hot coffee from the stand, and there was a couple Titans staff members, so it was cool catching up. And then I remember, towards the end of the day, I was playing catch outside the stadium, and I look over. So there was a car that was on. It was a white GMC or something. And I look over, and Mike Vrabel's just sitting in the driver's seat on the phone. He was on the phone for half hour. I'm like, dude, that's Mike Vrabel. It's crazy. So that was pretty cool. But anyway, Vrabel, according to Cimini, would consider the Jets if he, of course, likes the GM. Moving on, Aaron Glenn. Another really, really interesting name. Another, I feel like, hot candidate linked to the Jets because of the connections. I mean, you can list off so many different things, whether it's him playing for the Jets, whether it's him, having connections to Mike Tannenbaum, whether it's him interviewing for the job back before the Jets hired Robert Saleh, right back when Aaron Glenn was still on the Saints staff. He ultimately ends up as the DC of the Lions, that same cycle, right, because Campbell gets hired, the same cycle as Saleh. So you can point to all these different things, right? Tannenbaum hiring Aaron Glenn as a pro scout back in 2012. Glenn does make a lot of sense. You listen to what Lions players, what Lions staff members say, how they speak about Aaron Glenn. They love him. I love kind of having that former player in a big seat like this, as head coach, because I think that instantly commands respect from players. Right, this is a guy who's been there. He's done that. He knows what knows what it's like to practice. He knows what it's like to be, in a tough situation. He knows what it's like to lose. He knows what it's like to practice and game plan. And of course, right, we look at Aaron Glenn's coaching tree. I mean, there's really not a whole lot of negatives that you can talk about, right? I mean, you see player development. And of course, we can take a look at Glenn's coaching resume, right? This is someone who, of course, is performing well this season, right? The Lions defense is performing, I would say, better than previous years. I think a big part of that is because they actually went out and added some DBs. I mean, you have safeties that are developing at a high rate. Kirby Joseph, Brian Branch, these are two of the best, in my opinion. I would honestly say it's probably one of, if not the best, young safety tandem in football. I mean, those guys are really, really good, and they're developing at a pretty high clip. But at corner, trading for Carlton Davis, drafting Terrion Arnold, drafting Ennis Rakestraw, there was a big push from Holmes and the organization. Hey, we got to go out and get some DBs or, some cornerback help this offseason. So I think, even with Hutchinson going down, with all these injuries that the Lions have, it's been pretty impressive to see how Glenn has been able to just kind of not only just manage and keep the ship afloat, but actually have success, actually go out there and make winning plays. He's working with great coaches right now. He's working with a great front office right now with the Detroit Lions, so he knows what that looks like. Previously was with the New Orleans Saints, of course with Dan Campbell, but also Sean Payton most notably. We all know what the Saints were like under Sean Payton, especially towards the tail end. It was just nonstop winning. I mean, you can argue if that Rams PI was called in the NFC Championship game, it should have been the New Orleans Saints in the Super Bowl that season. Rams proceeded to lose that one. Could have looked differently. Could Sean Payton have had a second ring? Maybe. Too many hypotheticals, though. Bottom line, Aaron Glenn has a pretty impressive coaching resume here. Now, Cimini does cite, Glenn is a defensive guy. And quick little side note, I really don't mind a defensive guy because the Jets defense is not good at all. It is regressing. The numbers aren't there. The ranks aren't there. It's not good. So, I don't want to be hitting the head coaching search saying, okay, well, this guy might be a great leader or this guy might be a great fit or he could really, turn this, we all believe or buy into his vision on fixing the Jets, but he's a defensive coach, so we're going to pass. And we're just going to start crossing off names, right? Vrabel's a defensive guy. Flores is a defensive guy. Rex is a defensive guy. Glenn's a defensive guy. There's so many defensive, coaches available that makes sense. And, I don't want to hear that defensive coaches are not good head coaches, right? Mike Tomlin, Sean McDermott, D'Amico Ryans, former DC. We're all seeing what Dan Quinn is doing with Washington, Jonathan Gannon in Arizona. Who else? Mike McDonald, Seattle Seahawks. Raheem Morris. I know that the Falcons are kind of starting to slip right now, but still a 6-win team with a defensive-minded head coach. Not to mention Todd Bowles as well. So, defensive-minded coaches. I don't think defensive-minded head coaches should be a deterrent. For me personally, I think the biggest turnoff is if you're interviewing these guys and you're not getting a sense of leadership, you're not getting a sense of discipline, you're not getting a sense of, hey, we're going to focus on the culture, we're going to focus on the building, we're going to focus on the locker room, we're going to focus on the organization, we're going to focus on the details, the process, doing things the right way. Not being so wrapped up in winning a game and everything's amazing and the Jets are Super Bowl favorites, and then we lose a game and the culture is horrible and we have players, on social media defending, situations and the press conferences are weird and awkward. Like, I think there needs to be an attention to the day-to-day, someone that comes in with that accountability. And right now I would say that Aaron Glenn checks a lot of those different boxes. So, I am not going to be just, looking at Aaron Glenn, looking at all the positive qualities and saying, defensive guy, not interested. Again, I'm open to any coach from any side of the football, offense, defense, or special teams, as long as they provide the vital characteristics that I would personally be looking for, which is those strong organizational, like, structure skills, those leadership skills, because the Jets are devoid of any of that at this given point. So moving on. He names Arthur Smith as a dark horse candidate. Now, we did a video on Arthur Smith the other day. Obviously he's doing a great job this season. We're seeing what's happening with Russell Wilson, with Justin Fields, with time of possession, with running the ball. The Steelers, first place in the AFC North. The Pittsburgh Steelers are in a fantastic spot. Now, of course, they have a stacked roster, and Mike Tomlin, by the way, another defensive-minded head coach, is one of the best in football. So how much credit can we give to Arthur Smith here? I think we could give him a little bit more, because the Steelers in the past, their downfall has always been the quarterback position. It's always been the offensive side of the football. I'm talking post Roethlisberger here. It's Kenny Pickett years. Whereas this season, it really feels as though, if the Steelers need to go on a 2-minute drive, they can go down there and get that field goal, right? Boswell knocking it in. They can go down there, score a touchdown. If they need that 2-point, they can drop a play to go convert it. You look at Arthur Smith, he has the head coaching experience with Atlanta, where he wasn't horrible, just kind of like average 7-10 every single season there, 7-10 3 straight years. I don't think it would be the worst option in the world. He's not my number one choice, but I could see this being a realistic option because of the personnel that the Jets have. We know Arthur Smith wants to run the ball. We know that the Jets have an extremely talented and deep running back room, along with 4 out of the 5 offensive linemen are going to be starters next season. Olu, Simpson, Tippmann, and AVT. I think all 4 of those guys are going to be back. The question is, what's going to happen with right tackle? Could the Jets target a tackle up at the top of the draft, in that first round, maybe second round? Could they go out and sign someone, trade for someone, bring Morgan Moses back? There's a lot of different possibilities, but I think that's a pretty good starting point when you can say, all right, we want to get back to the ground game. Here's my offensive system. Let's, put this into motion. Great, we have 4 offensive linemen figured out. Oh, great, we already have multiple explosive running backs. It's not this, well, I really want to run the football, but it's going to be a 2-year cycle to figure out the 5 offensive linemen and to get a running back that we feel good about giving the rock to the entire game all year. So I do think Arthur does have some pull here. He's obviously familiar with the Jets organization. He interviewed to be the Jets head coach years and years ago. So it's going to be interesting. Arthur Smith, I think, is a name to watch. Again, he's not my first choice. He's not my second choice. Probably not my third choice either. But he's not. I think the Jets could do a lot worse than Arthur Smith. Number 4 was Liam Coen. Now, I've been a big Liam Coen fan for a long time. Rams, Kentucky, bounces over to the Bucs this season to replace Dave Canales, who, of course, accepted the head coaching job of the Panthers. And Cohen's doing great things with Baker Mayfield, that offense. And again, of course, you can argue, all right, well, the Bucs have a great offensive line, great wide receiving core, K-Dot at tight end, Baker at QB, Bucky Irving, one of the best offensive rookies this season. He's been a nice surprise. And he doesn't have to control the defense. That's Todd Bowles' thing. So he's really only working with like half the ball and can rely a lot on others, right? The personnel and the coaches. But Liam Coen, I feel like this has been in the making for a long time. If you ever listen to Liam Coen talk about his offensive football or preview other teams, it's pretty impressive. West Coast offensive system comes from the Sean McVay coaching tree. He's really done a good job of working his way up. And funny enough, Mike LaFleur actually replaced Liam Coen when he left initially with the Rams as OC. But in any case, I want the Jets to interview Liam Coen here. He does not have NFL experience. We don't know if he's, a leader and can hold people accountable. But I do think, based off the body of work, he's worth talking to. You never know what could happen, with a simple conversation, with a simple head coaching interview. So I'm not saying the Jets should be hiring Liam Coen immediately and he should be the number one, candidate here, but I do think he has a bright future and I do think he will be a head coach one day. Moving on, Anthony Lynn. Now, when I hear the name Anthony Lynn, my first thought is that he would be the OC if Rex got the job. That's kind of my, he's a Rex Ryan guy, has a background with offensive line. He's actually coached with the Jets before. He's been in multiple stops, has had head coaching experience. Most recently, he was the Lions offensive coordinator, and he was let go. Ben Johnson was, of course, promoted. But again, as head coach, I think Anthony Lynn, to me, would be one of I think maybe I could probably list off 5 or 6 candidates that I would rather have as head coach of the team. If you want to talk about OC, it's a different story, but it's an interesting name to throw out there. Next up was Ben Johnson. Now, Ben Johnson obviously is the hottest name, and I think the Jets should obviously interview him, but there's a feeling that he's only going to accept the best, like his picture perfect job. I mean, he's turned down multiple head coaching offers before last cycle. Seattle, Washington. You're looking at that Lions offense. It's fun to watch. It's innovative. You see trick plays, but you also see, back to basics, right? Just kind of the ground and pound game up the middle, like super traditional football. It's a nice mix of both. I mean, the team just constantly scores points. They constantly get in the end zone. I feel like they do a great job of just knowing what they need to do in each individual drive. So for example, like on that 1st and 10, Ben Johnson can execute exactly what he wants to do on a 12-play drive and not miss a beat, not have a single question or a single hiccup or a single penalty or a player not knowing where they need to be or a delay of game or they have to waste a timeout. No, it's just firing on all cylinders, like first down, second down, third down, first down, second down, third down, first down, massive chunk play, first down, second down, third down. And it's just like constant, it's just a barrage of positive yardage every single time. You don't even know where the ball is going to be going. It's tough to read the Lions offense because you kind of feel like as soon as you get a read on them, they switch it up with like this massive trick play, or they'll pull it back for play action when you try to, get a gauge on the running game. But here's the thing with Ben Johnson, right? The Lions offense is freaking loaded, right? They have one of the best offensive lines in football. You can make the same argument with Liam Coen. Great route runners to the wide receiver position. Jared Goff, veteran quarterback who's taking care of the ball. 2 fantastic backs, Montgomery and Gibbs. And even like the depth guys are stepping up too, right? Like the Tim Patricks of the world, like he's a major contributor. So my question is, with the Jets specifically, would football look a little bit differently? Would things maybe not look as smooth? I mean, the Jets can't even get lined up properly. We have to waste timeouts every week and get delay of games every week. I think, 90% of that is because the offensive staff is just not good at all. You can make an argument it's the worst offensive staff in football. But, going from what the Lions have, and you can, throw out other teams as well, like Jacksonville or New Orleans, like, would life be as easy as it is in Detroit? I feel like just because of the talent level there, because you have Aaron Glenn on defense, because you have Dan Campbell running the show as head coach, can Ben Johnson duplicate the same things with a lesser talented team with more responsibilities on his plate? I don't know. Maybe he can, maybe he can't. McVay could. Certain guys can't. So we'll see how it plays out with Ben Johnson, but I think really Jacksonville and Chicago make a ton of sense for Johnson here. Moving on, Bobby Slowik. Personally, I'm not interested. Again, we have all the questions. He hasn't been a head coaching before. Does he hold players accountable? Does he provide that leadership? All valid points. But also too, I mean, you're watching this Texans offense. I just feel like it's regressing this season. Like CJ Stroud just looks like a different player, kind of throwing off platform, just looks like out of rhythm. Now, I don't know if that's a player thing or a coaching thing, but personally, Slowik to me is just not in my top 5, 6, 7 candidates. But I still think, by kind of the logic that I've been talking about this whole video, I still want the Jets to talk to him. Again, you never know. He could blow you away. Maybe he's being held back. You never know what's going on. Number 8, Anthony Weaver, Miami Dolphins defensive coordinator. He's an interesting name because he always gets talked about like with interviews and stuff. He's a former player. He's been in the league for a long time. He's actually from New York. He gets a lot of credit for the development of defensive linemen, right? It always kind of feels like wherever Weaver goes, the defensive linemen's stats, their success goes up. So that's pretty enticing. But to me, it feels very similar to when Robert Saleh was back with the San Francisco 49ers, right? Players like him, has had a lot of success. He's been coaching for a long time, really understands his defense, development of defensive linemen. And, not saying that those are all, traits that I'm not interested in. I just feel as though, the Jets just went down this path before. So I'm not completely closing the book and saying, no, I'm not interested for an interview. Again, I still want the Jets to talk to him, but I don't think he's in my top 5 at this point in time. Now, the last name that Cimini mentioned was Anthony Becht, former Jets tight end, current UFL head coach of the St. Louis Battlehawks, where he's had success. He also mentioned that he could potentially have some interest in the West Virginia could potentially have interest in Becht. With their new head coaching opening, they obviously fired Neil Brown. Although I personally would not be surprised if we see Jimbo Fisher accept that West Virginia job. I think that'd be a cool, interesting fit for Fisher to kind of get back to, maybe have a chance to right his wrongs. With everything that went down at Texas A&M. I think Fisher with the Mountaineers, obviously, from there and everything. I think that makes a lot of sense. But anyway, Anthony Becht is an interesting option because, again, whenever you have that former player, former Jet, it always makes you like perk up a little bit. Like same argument could be made with Aaron Glenn, right? Because he's a Jet, because he's like bled green before in the past, because he knows the organization, it always is like, all right, this guy gets us. He understands us, and he's been a Jet, so he knows what it takes. He knows what it looks like. But right now, I just think that the resume is a little bit too small for my liking. If Becht was coaching for, had an extra 5 years of experience or has worked, as a coordinator or as an assistant head coach in some facet in the NFL, maybe I would have a little bit more interest at this point in time. Of course, no disrespect, but, if I'm being 100% honest, I would rather take, my 5 top candidates. Also, Cimini mentioned Bill Belichick at the end. It's not going to happen. But anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Out of those 9 or 10 names, who strikes you the most, right? Who is the guy that gets you the most excited? Probably Vrabel, Ben Johnson are going to be the, most popular. But, and, by the way, Cimini didn't say, oh, it's down to these 9 or anything. We have yet to hire a general manager. If it's Gregson, I could see Flores getting an interview. I could see Phillips getting an interview, right? What's going to happen with Jesse Minter? There's a lot of guys. Spagnuolo, right? There's a lot of candidates that the Jets are going to, or I should say, should look at this cycle. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Thanks so much for watching. I appreciate you guys. And as always, go Jets.